And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
You know, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Tom Kocher.
how well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMarketing.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of PreneurCast with me, Dom Goucher, and again, Pete Williams in a slightly different format. What I've got for you this week is another interview that Pete did on another podcast. We're doing these shows where we're featuring other podcasts as another resource for you to learn something from and gain some insight and value from. And the way that we're doing it is that we are featuring interviews that myself or Pete have done on these podcasts. So you get an idea of the kind of material that's covered and the kind of questions that are asked and the general quality of the podcast. Rather than just say, hey, go listen to this, it's great. We think this is a much more effective way of giving you a good idea of what it's all about. This week, we are featuring the Get Internet Famous podcast with Alejandro Reyes. And Alejandro focuses on online marketing that creates influence, impact, and income. He interviews people and gives over ideas and information about how you can basically grow your presence online. And really, that's the focus of this interview with Pete. He drills down with Pete on Pete's ideas about how you can market yourself, your business, your product, etc. online and get some great productivity tips. Now, you may have come across some of this stuff before in our previous podcasts and previous episodes that we've recorded, both Pete and myself. But again, it's just a different angle, somebody else asking the questions and getting a little bit more depth in certain areas. So with that said, I'm going to hand you over to Alejandro and Pete for a great interview.
And now I'm going to turn our focus to the interview with my main man, Pete Williams. This guy, literally, I mean, if you go to his website, in media in Australia, they call him the Australian Richard Branson. This guy's built several businesses, and actually, during the interview, he nonchalant. You're going to hear it. He says something about making $500,000 a month. His businesses and e-commerce sites make $500,000, and I didn't catch it right away. But after that, I'm like, $500,000 a month. I send him an email. I'll say, hey, just to clarify, because I'm writing this blog post, the show notes, that you are making $500,000 a month. And he just replies back, yep. So on Get Internet Famous podcast, I want to bring people on that aren't just great communicators, but people that are actually out there doing business. And the thing that I love most about Pete and why I listen to every podcast he creates, he's someone that is like a must. You have people online, and I hope Get Internet Famous becomes that for you, that you just can't you have to read or watch or listen to everything this guy puts out. And I listen to all of his podcasts. He runs a podcast called PreneurCast. He gets thousands and thousands of downloads a week, and they do very well. It's in the What's Hot section of iTunes in business. And just an amazing guy at a young age became a millionaire. Had the opportunity of hanging out with him out in San Diego a few years ago. Just a really cool guy. And so please get your notepad out. The reason I love this guy in this interview so much is he runs a multi-million-dollar offline telecommunications business, and he's leveraged most of the leads in the business by driving traffic from the web. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into this amazing podcast with Mr. Pete Williams, the Australian Richard Branson. All right, folks, so we are in the interview now with my boy, I've actually known for a while, Mr. Pete Williams. What's up, Pete?
Mate, doing very well here in Australia. Nice cold winter morning, but doing very well.
So I'm just going to predict that this interview is probably going to get the most downloads just because of your accent. So I'm just gonna put that out there. And crazy thing, most of the people that I met in the marketing space online, I met through forums or Twitter or Facebook, and I actually met Pete offline, there was a gentleman that was from Australia that lived about a block from me and told me about this Richard Branson of Australia. And long story short, we connected. We hung out in person at one of Ed Dale's events, and just really learning from you. And the great thing about it is, after we got a chance to connect for a little bit, did some research on you, and I was just blown away on you were out of my league, man, but you still treated me great, man, and took care of me when we were out there in San Diego, man. So appreciate that, and appreciate you for doing this interview.
Mate, for you, anything, you're a champion. So happy to support anything you're doing, mate. You do good work. So
awesome, man. Well, let's jump right into this, man. You've built a personal brand. You're doing some really cool things in the online space, but you've got a really successful business offline as well that not a lot of people know about. But if you can kind of give folks that maybe don't know you yet a little bit how you got started in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, sure. I've kind of always had that sort of, I guess, thing inside me, and Mum tells this awesome story that she loves to talk about. Is when I was 3 or 4 years old, I apparently had some crayon and drew arrows all the way down the hallway. And when Mum sort of came to tell me off, she asked me why I did it to start with, and I said, well, if you need to find me, you can get to my office. So I don't know where it came from. My parents aren't sort of entrepreneurs. Mum's a teacher by trade, and my dad's a logistics manager. So not sort of entrepreneurial, but it's kind of always been part of my DNA. And started my first business when I was in high school, doing websites. So always had this sort of online link somewhere in what I've done. So that was kind of where I started. And subsequent to that, there's a whole bunch of long story we can go through. But now I own a telecommunications company here in Australia. So we sell and install phone systems, about as boring as you can really get. But the really interesting thing is that the vast majority, if not all of our initial leads, obviously we've got the back end and repeat sales and all that sort of stuff, but all the front end sales we get is all from our online marketing. Have a number of e-commerce sites as well, with the same business partners there, doing $500,000 or so a month roughly in e-com sales of headsets and other telco related products. So that's kind of, I guess, the primary focus for me. I've got my hand into some software companies, other bits and pieces that help my self-diagnosed ADD, but primarily it's this real-world tangible businesses selling real stuff to real people, but using the internet as the primary source for lead generation. Because these days, the question I always ask when every business or project I'm working on, with whether it's myself or whether a company I'm invested in, is that, well, where are your customers and where do they go when they realize they have a problem they need solved? And you want to be there where they're looking. Now, 10 years ago, it probably would have been the Yellow Pages, because that's where people were going. But these days, everyone is going online, no matter whether it's a phone system they want to buy, whether it's some education, or they want to buy some glasses or whatever it might be. They're going online. So that's why we are there, is purely because that's where the market is. If in 3 months' time or 6 months' time it goes back to billboards and SMS marketing or something, somewhere else people go to look for problems and solutions, we'll just make sure we move and are there. So that's kind of the reason the online world is kind of where I play. That's because where the eyeballs are.
No, I agree 100% with you. You're right. 10 years ago, and you spent, you could spend 10 grand a month on Yellow Page ads, and you could sit back in your office as a brick and mortar, local business owner and expect people to walk through the door. But you have to be where people are at most. And so they're online right now. And so the question becomes, there's a lot of noise out there. I mean, you log into Facebook, there's a ticker on the right side, and Twitter, and, you're getting these notifications, and there's just so much noise. And so, what Getting Internet Famous is really all about is how to pierce through that noise by really positioning your brand as kind of that go-to resource. And so, what do you think it takes? I mean, you didn't really have to be this, you speak at conferences, you got some really cool products and training out there. You didn't really have to get online. Why did you decide to kind of be this online guy as well?
I guess that came from, like, one of the earlier projects I did was a really cool one, and we won't sort of go into too depth on it because it'll take half an hour to explain. But off the back of that project, I got given a book deal, which was really cool, and then obviously got speaking invitations and stuff like that, and kind of fell into this online world, and kind of got asked to speak at events, and enjoyed the speaking side of stuff, but found that I'd be sitting in a room for most of the day listening to other speakers who were just pitching stuff that just didn't seem right to me. Because, like, well, hang on, what you're standing on stage selling and talking about, if that was actually true, you'd be doing that and not standing on stage and spending every second weekend at an event trying to make money. So I kind of felt like, well, I have some experience, and it's worked really well and in a number of different areas and niches and projects that I guess from there I just wanted to start talking and sharing my story about what I know actually works, because, as I said, the 90% of the revenue that I make across my businesses is selling real stuff to real people who have no necessary idea who this Pete Williams brand is per se. So for me to, when I speak, it's speaking about that, not speaking about my speaking, if that kind of makes any sense whatsoever. So that's sort of where that came from, and why I do that sort of stuff, because, as I said before, my mum's a teacher, so I think that is somewhat in my DNA as well. So I really do enjoy it. But there's just, as you said, there's so much noise out there, not only online trying to sell whatever you're selling, but also in this sort of education and space as well. So it's just trying to sort of talk to people about what actually does make a difference and not what actually puts money in my back pocket, because, for me to sort of make the revenue that I make elsewhere, I'd have to be Tony Robbins 3 times over kind of stuff in speaking. So,
No, I agree 100%. I have a friend of mine who wrote a book on Pinterest called Pinterest Power. And it's actually a guy that wrote the book, and his wife's business, he does some online marketing for it. And they did a little over 200 last year. They're going to do a little over 300,000 this year in a really small niche. And so on Facebook, someone had mentioned, hey, does anybody know any Pinterest experts? And I figured, well, my buddy wrote a book, and he's actually really building a successful 6-figure business with it. And everybody on there was promoting someone else who just like teaches it. I mean, they just, you know what I mean? And so the thing I love most about you, and the thing I think I gravitated towards you, having ran a local agency, was dealing with real business, real people, selling real tangible products. And so, there's a difference between, for folks that are listening to this, there is a difference between people that are actually, teaching it, and having never really built a business out of it. And then there's people that actually teach it because this is what they're doing every single day at a real business. And so you're one of those guys, man. And, I appreciate that about you so much.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that as well.
So again, getting back to that personal brand, I mean, you never really intended, but you teach a lot of people, through your podcast, PreneurCast, through different training. What would you say is the thing that would help someone get internet famous? How do they become, separate themselves and become different than everyone else to become that resource?
Sure. I think my take on this is probably very similar, but also very, very different to a lot of people, in that, people have probably heard that content is king, and you've got to produce lots of content and all that sort of stuff online as a brand. So you need to have a YouTube channel and be doing YouTube videos, and need to be blogging as well, and then you need to have a podcast as well, and you need to have all this guest posting going on. And for a lot of people, that's overwhelming. That stuff does work. Content marketing is key. So that, I guess, underlying truism is definitely there. But I think the way a lot of people go about trying to do this content marketing just isn't sustainable or leverageable, because the mindset people have is that, hang on, okay, I need to be on YouTube. So I need to come up on Monday morning with an idea for a YouTube video, and then figure out how I'm going to shoot and record a YouTube video. So I'm there in that audience, in that marketplace, reaching that audience. Then I've got to think on Tuesday how to write a blog post and a topic for a blog post. And then Wednesday, it's like, okay, I've got to do a podcast. And they run out of ideas for content ridiculously quickly, because there's, they spread themselves too thin across all these platforms. But the thing that I luckily realized very early on is that the type of people who listen to podcasts like they are right now are probably not the same sort of people who spend 10 hours a week reading blog posts. And it's a different sort of person who's going to be spending 15 hours a week watching YouTube videos. For me, for example, I do a lot of triathlon training. Well, have done previous to having a baby a few weeks ago. So I do a lot of my consumption of content in audio format. I very rarely watch YouTube videos, even before I had Eli. I very rarely read blog posts, because, I've got my own, from front of my laptop, I'm producing, not consuming. So all my consumption stuff is when I'm actually out running or riding, or, in the car between meetings and things like that. So I consume audio stuff. So I'm not consuming the written word or the videos. So if someone that I wanted to follow, someone's trying to create a position for their own brand somewhere, and I'm going to somehow stumble across them and follow them, I'm only going to consume their audio stuff. So if they write something completely unique and separate on a blog post or in a YouTube video, I'm never going to hear it or see it. So what that means, and what I kind of figured out from there, is on the other side of the coin is, then why would that person, or me, if I'm trying to be that, internet famous, as you say, is that, well, hang on, why don't I just use one topic and then use different modalities to actually communicate that one topic? So that way I'm reaching my entire marketplace with that one message in the different modalities that they want to reach me in.
That's good.
So the process that we've gone about, when I produce content, because one of the other reasons is because I'm so busy with other projects, I don't have time to sit down and write a blog post on Monday, a video on Tuesday, and an audio podcast on Wednesday. So what the process we do is that I'll go out and I'll record an audio on a Monday morning about a particular piece of topic, whatever information is I'm trying to talk about or suggest, or this is what I'm suggesting your audience do, is on a Monday morning, create an audio, 15 minutes, where you talk articulately, maybe to a bullet point list or a mind map of what the content's going to be like, and that becomes your core piece of content. And then from there, what you can do is have that cleaned up and put a top and tail with maybe an intro and outro from Fiverr.com. You can pay $5 to get a nice intro, and now you've got a podcast episode you've created, a nice 15-minute podcast. But then give that to a transcriptionist or an editor, who is cheaper than a writer, by the way, to actually go and turn that audio into a blog post. So you don't have to actually do anything. You have to actually write a single word, because that editor can take your message, your voice, your ideas, and make it coherent into a blog post. And that blog post can get posted on your blog on Tuesday. And then why not have a very cheap resource, someone in the Philippines or India or wherever it might be, take the audio you create on that Monday and then create a PowerPoint slide presentation to match what you're talking about. So taking the bullet points that you use as a guide or the mind map, and actually have a video creator where it has graphics and words flash on the screen to match your audio. So then that can be uploaded to YouTube, and everyone's sort of seeing those visual videos out there. So that's reaching your YouTube audience. So fundamentally, and this is a very short version of this, but with 15-minute input on a Monday, you've now reached your audio type medium audience. You've reached the people who like to read as a modality, and you've reached people who like to view stuff on YouTube or Vimeo. And all you've done is that 15-minute input with one core piece of content. So that one message you're really trying to distill out to your audience is getting touched everyone, not just the type of reader or the type of person who you've produced that content for. So that's sort of, I guess, what I believe is the biggest impact you can have for the smallest amount of effort when you're wanting to try and get internet famous, as you said, because you're reaching different people in the modalities they want. So it's all about content creation and content marketing, which everyone's sort of talking about and probably people are sick of hearing. But the problem is that I think the way people are teaching you to do it just requires way too much work.
That's good.
And you burn out way too quickly, whereas this is, you got one idea a week is all you need, and you can then leverage that and syndicate that across different modalities to reach the audience you need to.
Huge, man. I mean, I might have to steal that and make a product out of it, bro. No, that was super good, man. I think that's kind of something I've been struggling. I wanted to ship, man. I wanted to get this out there. If my website would have been perfect, I mean, there's probably grammatical errors on it, but I just wanted to get it up there. And the thing I'm thinking about this week, 3 weeks into launching, my website is, what type of content for which platform. And, Monday, come Monday or the weekend or whatever, just get those thoughts out there and, have that, syndicate to all those different, modalities that people want to learn for. So I think that's brilliant. So when you're those 10, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, that audio that you're producing on Monday, how are you creating content that you've been working on, in your real business, or are you finding content that you're getting asked the most that solves your audience's problem? Like, how are you creating getting ideas for these content?
Very, very good question. I think it's a mixture of a few things. So it's a mixture of probably 2 or 3 things. Firstly, it's obviously questions that come about. So obviously, as you get more internet famous, people are going to sort of follow you and ask you questions on Twitter and email and stuff like that. So that gives you good sources of ideas to talk about. Because if one person in your audience has asked a question, there's going to be 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 people having that same problem and question. So it's a great topic for a piece of content. So that's one way. As you grow, that becomes easier. Obviously, a big chunk of it is what I'm actually doing, because, as we spoke about before, it's about what I actually am doing, not what I'm just thinking about. Whereas a lot of people out there, they talk and they teach without actually doing anything. So that's a big thing in terms of content, is that I'm doing this stuff and talking about stuff I'm actually doing in our real world business, selling to real people. So that's a huge piece of inspiration for content ideas. And the third thing is just debunking other crap I hear online. So if I read a newsletter list or a sales page or another podcast, whatever it might be, and I'll have an opinion on that based on my experience and debunk it and pull it apart and say why it's great or why it's wrong or why there's no substance to it, that you sort of, it's, I guess people are calling it curation, and I guess content curation again is a bit of a buzzword, but it is kind of that with a little bit more thought around it and substance behind it than the typical sort of content curation stuff people are teaching. So they're probably the three keys for content ideas.
No, I think that's awesome. That last one is great. Have you had anybody come back and say, how dare you, Pete, say that this is crap? Has anybody ever, like, any authors or writers or bloggers?
Look, I think I try and do it respectively. So that's part of it. I definitely have audience members who kind of try and defend these people who they've maybe invested $2,000 with, or $500 with, or whatever it might be, and then sort of really trying to hold on to their own belief system. So they're sort of fighting the fight for that third party purely because of their own belief system that they've bought into. So that's always interesting. But no one actually out there has really ever sort of stood up and had to go back, I guess, because I don't try and go too hard for the jugular, because I don't want to get into bitch fights at the schoolyard, pulling ponytails or anything like that. But yeah, I think also too they know a lot of the substance and where I come from too, so they can't sort of debunk a lot of it, because again, it's all my opinion and my experience and my test results. So there's plenty of different ways to grow an orchard. Different ways you fertilize and you water, and when you plow and when you pick and all that sort of stuff. So there's not one right way to anything. So it's all just, this is my opinion and my experience trying to get that same outcome, and that's all it is, just opinions.
Man, this is good stuff, man. I'm right here taking notes. I can listen again, but I'm taking notes as you speak, man. So I got a couple more questions, and one just came up to my in my mind, but I'll ask that one last probably. But so you have
like I said to you in that San Diego hotel room, mate, you can't be the big spoon. I know you're going to ask me that again, but it can't happen.
We were actually spooning. But anyways, that was a really fun weekend, man. So, and like every top 40 song, every lyric of it, which is insane.
It was quite embarrassing on the dance floor at the Hard Hotel in San Diego, wasn't it?
Epic. So you have a successful podcast, and the reason I'm bringing up your podcast, one, and no joke, I'm not trying to, stroke your ego or anything, but if there's one podcast, listen, I'm subscribed to guys like Derek Halpern and Pat Flynn, and they got great content, Michael Hyatt, and there's some good stuff out there, but the one just from a real business standpoint, and just knowing that I'm going to hear stuff that is I can actually apply that day, that moment in my business. Like, I have to listen to your guys' podcast, PreneurCast. And you said earlier, being where your audience is at most. And I think that's super critical. And so, I'm not going to ask why the importance of, starting the podcast, but what has been successful for you? Like, you guys got a pretty successful podcast. It's on What's Hot on iTunes. And so it's one of the hottest business podcasts on iTunes in the world. And so my question is, what has made for those thinking about setting up a podcast, what has been kind of your secret sauce to having a good podcast?
Yeah, cool. Probably a few things. Like the reason we actually started that is basically the exact same method and model I was talking about before, is that like I can jump on for an hour once a week and talk to Dom, the co-host, and just talk. And then that's it. Like there's no real prep for that. It's just about, here's a topic idea, let's talk about it for an hour. And that becomes some good content that people seem to be really enjoying. We're almost hitting our 100th episode now, which is great. But then that becomes, content that our editors can take and become blog posts on our own blog, rewritten so it's unique enough. So it's a guest post, because I get asked quite a bit now to write, for magazines and other blogs and stuff like that. So we now have, a library almost of content that's been rewritten and edited up based off podcasts I've done, which I don't have to write a single word for, I don't pub a single key on the keyboard. And also we have videos created off the back of that. So one of the key reasons for doing it is because it was just a very easy input for me to be able to get content out on the other side of the little sort of machine, so to speak. So that's sort of one of the reasons. I guess one of the big keys that made it successful for us is we built the habit before we made it public. So what I mean by we built the habit before we made it public is we actually recorded 5 or 6 episodes, I think it would have been, prior to actually releasing it to anybody, putting it on iTunes, telling everybody about it. What we actually did is we said, okay, we're going to record this every Friday morning. So let's actually put it in the calendar every Friday morning and record 1 episode a week for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and make sure we built that habit before we actually published it. Because if we realized we could do 3 episodes and then we both got too busy and it didn't actually work, there's no point actually publishing it, doing something for 3 weeks, and then if falling off the radar, you look like an absolute fool. So that was probably the biggest key for us. It's probably not exactly the answer you're looking for, but it is probably the biggest key for us. We built that habit first. And it wasn't about having. This is something I find interesting, is that I've spoken about this before, and a couple of people said to me, I went and spent a whole day and recorded 5 episodes one day. So I had 5 episodes up my sleeve, so I was able to, and I was always 5 weeks ahead. And that's great, but that wasn't the reason we were trying to do it. The reason we were doing it is to build the habit, not to have the content necessarily. Now, we obviously use those 5 episodes and publish those, but for us, it was about the habit, not about the content. So we could have technically thrown out that content, never actually published it, and just started publishing the ones we recorded after that 5 weeks. So that's sort of the slight shift there in terms of that sort of, I guess, tip or trick.
No, I love it. The hack. So, all right. So my last 2 questions may kind of be one question. They may be 2 questions, but so I want to know, building a real business, dealing with real, building a very successful business, what is the business mindset that you see that's different, building that type of business? What type of advice would you give somebody that is building an online? They're trying to build, maybe they're a successful speaker offline or a successful author offline. They've had some success, but they're just not doing a great job online. What do you think the mindset is to building a brand online?
That it is a business. I think you use the very smart word there, that it is actually a business that you have to build. And I think so many people sort of think of it as, I'm a website.
That's good.
Or I'm an internet marketer, and that, I don't want to swear on your show because I want to keep it, nicely graded for you. But that is the biggest fallacy. There is no such thing as an internet marketer, unless you're an internet service provider selling internet connections. You're not marketing the internet. You're not an internet marketer. You don't hear people turn around and go, I'm a Yellow Pages marketer, or I'm a billboard marketer. They're a business owner and they're a marketer. So I think the problem is that this, industry that's kind of been built where people sell how to make money online kind of stuff, is that they sell it as like, hey, start a website, become an internet marketer. And then you have this mindset that you there's no term around business or business model or planning. Whereas that's what you actually need. The internet is just a platform. It's just a path to market. So you still need a business model. You still need a business plan. So I think that, I think you almost answered the question yourself with the word business.
No, that's excellent, man. So my last question for you, man, and then I'll let you go to is Eli, right?
Eli, yep.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
Elijah. But that'll only be when he's in trouble or in the principal's office.
There you go. And you probably may get this question a lot, but for someone that is listening to this today, and it's like they're listening to this obviously because they want to learn how to get known online. Looking back, what would you tell someone that says, "Hey, Pete, what is the fastest way or the best way?" Maybe the fastest way isn't always the best. What's the best way to become the market leader, to get known and become internet famous?
The best way. I think the best way is just be consistent. I think I think this is again from the testing we've done is that there is no one best way. In terms of, I do a podcast or blog every day. You look at, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a social media guy, and he did a video every day. Whereas someone like Pat Flynn, as you mentioned before, has got a great podcast, very transparent. He was a podcaster. Whereas, there's other people out there who are, Copy Blogger, for example, people who might be familiar with him, he's a writer. So there's 3 completely different models to become business and market leaders is video, Gary Vaynerchuk, podcasting, Pat Flynn, writing, Copy Blogger, or Seth Godin, for example. So to sort of say this is the one tool to use, I think it's an absolute fallacy. All those 3 guys reached their success because they did it every single friggin' day for a year at least, and they hit a tipping point. So I think people they jump from one tool to the other because the new tool's hot, because that's what the sales letter and the email pitch that hit their inbox says. But it's irrelevant. Pick one thing and just do it every freaking day, and you will rise above the herd because you're the only person who's being consistent. That's all it comes down to.
When it goes back to that audio, I mean, you create that audio and you have someone do all the other modalities. I think that's the way to do it.
That definitely helps you fast track it. There's no doubt about that, because then every day, every week, or every day, depending how much you want to scale it, you are podcasting, writing, doing video. So obviously you got 3 oars in the water at that point. So it's obviously going to go faster. But it's still about consistency. If you only do that for 3 weeks and then disappear for 2 weeks, then come back and do 1, and then disappear for 5, and do 2 weeks, that's not going to give you the result you want. It's not about being necessarily on the different modalities. It's being consistent across one. And if you have the resources and system in place and the right methodology, then you can fast track it with the different modalities and different platforms. But it's not about the platform itself.
No, that's beautiful, man. The funny thing is, my second podcast was with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I asked him, what are the 3 things? And he gave me 3 things, but he said the truth about it is there's 9,000 things. There's just tons of things that it's this, it's that, it's the other. You have to, you're running a business, so you have to in the beginning probably do a lot of different things. And so, but I do love it. I mean, consistency. This is something that I think early on with my online career, if you will. I think what really hurt me was consistency, creating that content on a consistent basis, building that habit that you talked about. And I think that's what really will help folks, is that consistency. So listen, man. Go ahead.
One really quick thing, sorry, just to throw out there, is if people don't like the audio, now, just this is the thing, is to get consistency, if you don't like doing audio and you don't like the sound of your own voice, you're clearly not going to be consistent at doing that sort of methodology I spoke about before, where you do the audio first, because that's not what your strength is or what you enjoy. So think about how you can mold that to your own strength. If you're a writer, if you prefer to write and you can write every single day, then write a blog post every single day and then pay a voiceover artist on Fiverr.com $5 to voice your podcast for you. Hey, this is Alejandro's blog voiced by Tom Jones. Think about audiobooks at audible.com. They're all voiced majority by voiceover artists. So you can do the same thing with your videos and your podcasts. Just change the input to what your strength is so you can be consistent, and then leverage the other type of modalities.
Love it, man. Fiverr.com. We'll put some of the links and tips in the show notes, so make sure to check those out. So Pete, tell me, tell folks a little bit about where they can find you. I know you're working on the 7 levers, folks. If you've never subscribed to Pete's podcast or heard him talk about the seven levers, check out the PreneurCast on iTunes. Yep. And the 7 levers. I mean, this is you've done like a 7 levers redux on it, and can you talk a little bit about the 7 levers? I know you're working on it, or is that something that people can tap into right now?
Yeah, look, we've spoken about it a lot on the podcast, putting the fine-tuning on a report that's actually getting written up. It's about 35 pages, which will be hopefully out in the next sort of couple of days. So hopefully if people just head over to PreneurMarketing.com, which is my blog, they'll see a whole bunch of stuff. And obviously once the report's available for download, they'll be able to check that out. But fundamentally, the 7 levers is the 7 key inputs that drive profit in any business, no matter what it is, whether you're a tradesperson, a speaker, information marketer, have an e-com site. And it's basically, if you work on these 7 levers and tweak each of them by about 10.8%, which is very easy to do. Like if you just focus on traffic, you can improve your traffic by 10%, and that's one of the levers, very, very easily. With a couple of split tests, you can improve your conversion rate by 10%. So just 7 small 10% increases can actually double the profit of your business. So literally, if you focus on the right things, 1 lever per week, in 7 weeks, you should be able to double the profit of your business. And that's what the whole idea of the report and that process and framework is. So check out the podcast. We talk about it quite a bit, sort of the foundation of that particular show. And I talk about it on PreneurMarketing.com as well, which is the blog.
No, well, listen, folks, if you're going to hear me in future podcasts say, hey, go check out this website or the person I'm interviewing, but I highly recommend to subscribe to Pete's podcast, subscribe to his newsletter, follow him on Twitter. Honest to God, I think, it would be a disservice to your business and your legacy if you don't follow this man. No joke. He's someone I look up to and has really helped me with my business tremendously, man. So I really appreciate you, bro.
Mate, you too. Thank you very much for having me. And anytime, any way I can help, mate, I'm always here for you.
I'm gonna hold you to that. I want to do a webinar talking about those 7 levers. So
done.
All right, thanks, guys.
So there you go, folks. I hope you found that interesting. And you can find out more about Alejandro's podcast over at getinternetfamous.com if you're interested in hearing any more episodes from Alejandro and his other guests. As I've said before, this is a new thing that Pete and I are trying, where we are bringing you these other podcasts on occasion and just letting you experience the hosts and the general kind of topics and material that they have through them interviewing either Pete or myself. This gives you 2 things. First of all, you can hear the kind of questions that these hosts are asking their guests, but also it gives you another angle on the material that Pete and I have to share. Somebody might actually ask a question that either Pete or I wouldn't ask each other, or that you might be thinking but haven't maybe asked us yourselves. So it's a great way, in our opinion, of getting some new, interesting material across to you. Do pop over to PreneurMarketing.com, where all the show recordings, all our episodes of the podcast, with all the show notes and transcripts and things can be found, but also where you can leave us a comment, either a comment below the post for an individual episode or a general comment with the audio comment tool that's available on the website. Let us know what you think about this format of episode. Let us know if you think it's valuable and interesting, if you get anything from it, if you'd like us to try and do some more, or if there's anything else that you'd like us to cover or talk about in the podcast. And also, if you have a podcast and you'd like Pete or I to be a guest, you can drop us a line at support@preneurgroup.com. As always, we look forward to your feedback, either at preneurmarketing.com or on the iTunes store, whichever you prefer. So with that said, have a great week, and we'll see you all soon.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gocher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.preneurmarketing.com or drop them a line via PreneurCast@preneurgroup.com.